for as long as I've been doing this now, and it has been over a year that we've been meeting on Tuesday nights, you'd think I would know what I was doing. I clicked on join this meeting, and I start talking, and I realize I'm talking to myself because I was in a meeting separate from all of you. Got it figured out. So glad to see you tonight. We've had a wacky week here at Good Natured World Headquarters, and it actually started with the marketing department and sort of tumbled over into nature. We'll get to that story in just a few minutes. Got to get caught up on our Mantidfly story that came about last week in last week's column, and a really interesting email that I want to get your opinions on. So with that, I'll go ahead and get the screen share started, and we'll get this show on the road. Enough of that. Let's start with our exploration of this really intriguing creature that I didn't set out to find, and that's, you know, whether you're clothes shopping or out looking at nature, it always seems like if you've got something specific in mind, it's hard to find. But if you're kind of open to whatever comes along, you see the most amazing things. And as it was with this creature, I'd heard of them. I certainly wasn't out looking for them. In fact, I was at Delnor Woods on this particular day. This was about, at this point, maybe 2.5 weeks ago. I was actually looking at the Joe Pye weed, thinking it was time to I learned a few things about the history of the flower and the plant, and I wanted to share that. So I was actually at Delnor Woods looking at Joe Pye weed when I actually thought this little insect here was like a dead leaf. I think I called it schmutz in the column. And when I went to move it, it kind of looked at me and I kind of looked at it, and well, the rest is history. I learned quite a bit about this really, really interesting group of insects. They are not very closely related to praying mantids at all. They're in the order Neuroptera, which includes a few other insects that have these very, well, lacy wings. You can clearly see the vein pattern in them. There's 11 species in the United States, which isn't very many. When you compare that to, say, the number of mayflies or caddisflies, 11 species. At first I thought, oh, this is doable. I'm going to be able to identify this one, 2 species. But then when I started looking at the ins and outs of what you needed to see, I realized that I didn't have the equipment or the knowledge to figure it out. There's a lot of focus on this region here, which is called the pronotum, and there's some segments, there's some hairs. Some species have segments, some species have hairs, some have both. I drew the line and said, you know what, we're just going to call it a mantidfly, which even that isn't fully accepted across the board. Some references call these mantis flies, and you can see in the family name Mantispidae, mantid, mantis, the word seems to be used interchangeably. So that's one aspect of this fascinating creature. You know, when you look at it, it kind of looks like a praying mantis and a lacewing got together. And as a matter of fact, that's how it's described in the literature. Both of these insects are predatory, as is the mantidfly. On the left in this picture, we have a Chinese mantid. It's hanging out on some milkweed last fall. On the right, we have one of our green lacewings, which is a creature that has a predatory slant throughout its life. In its younger, in its larval form, it's also highly predatory on other insects. So these two creatures, which would never get together in real life, it almost seems like it was a Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein or Frankenstein type of experiment. But the mantid fly has the predatory forearms of they call them raptorial forearms of the praying mantis, along with the mouth parts and the wings of the lacewing. And in real life, it actually is more closely related to the lacewings, which was explain why it's eggs. Now, I have to say, these are not mantid fly eggs. These are green lacewing eggs. These were dangling from some milkweed out in front of Hickory Knolls. This was taken by our supervisor, Chris, last summer. Delicate little eggs on strands. Well, the mantid fly also lays eggs on strands, but they tend to put out a lot of eggs because their life cycle is a little bit more complicated. And the eggs, at least in some of the species, have a deeper color to them, kind of a reddish color. So if you see eggs hanging like this, you can be pretty certain that you're looking at some sort of neuropteran. Might be a lacewing, might be a mantid fly, but look for these. This picture was actually taken in mid-July last year. So it's about the timing is about right to look for them again this year. Now, this life cycle, pretty crazy. Here we have our illustrated stages of a mantid fly. This was taken from a book on entomology by John Comstock. This was actually decades old, but it was at a time when this life cycle was kind of being mapped out. You can see I've got a couple of words on there, Campodeiform and Sgrabiform. Sgrabiform. You can read it. I'm not going to say it. But this Campodeiform is the first step in the life cycle of, well, actually the first step would be the eggs, but once it hatches, the first stage of the insect's life is this actually quite mobile form, larval form. Comes out of the egg, and some references says it overwinters in this first stage. I only read that in one place, so it might depend on the species, but what this form needs to find is right above it, this spider. This is a wolf spider, ground non-web spinning spiders, of which the wolf spiders are probably one of the largest in our area. The larval mantid fly needs to kind of hitch a ride on a spider, and imagine, wolf spider crawling along. This small creature climbs aboard, and then it waits for the spider to produce an egg sac. From there, this little larvae gets inside of that egg sac. It usually, again, the references vary in the story, varies depending on species, but it either chews its way in or more commonly is wrapped up inside of that wad of silk that the female spider produces. And from there, it's kind of fat city because it is surrounded by the food it needs to eat, which is baby spiders. So it hangs out in this egg sac, feeding away on those little tiny spiders that are inside the egg sac. It actually then changes form. It stays a larva, but it goes from this highly mobile Campodeiform to this, you'll notice scarab is the first part of this word, the scarab form. That's because scarab beetles, a lot of beetle larvae have this grub-like stage when they're larvae as well. So it goes from one type of larvae to another type of larva. And then after it eats and eats and eats, it molts again and it changes into this kind of sub-adult. You'll notice that it is at this point wingless, and then it exits the egg case, feeds some more, molts one more time, the wings come out, and we have our fully formed mantid fly. So I'd heard of them. I hadn't really learned a lot about them until after I just made the discovery over at Delnor Woods. Here's a little video that I shot that day. Here in the center, I was actually, what caught my eye at first was the work of this leaf miner here. You've probably seen patterns like this on other leaves as well, but this is a tiny little insect that bores between the layers of the leaf, feeding on the vascular tissue in there, the veins, and they make all these crazy designs. That's what caught my eye first, and the schmutz came a little later. Let's watch video. I'm going to turn it down because I don't know if I was talking to myself, as I often do. But there's the schmutz, there's the mantidfly, and you can see, look at its antennae twitching. It's like, something's getting awfully close, invading my space. I'm gonna flex my raptorial forearm. I'm gonna flex it again. I'm going to show it that I'm the king of this leaf. It just really blew my mind. I stood there for a really long time watching this amazing creature, and it was contemplating me as well. And I said those antennae kept twitching. I eventually backed off, I took a few photos, and I left. I've been back to Delnor Woods a couple more times. I have not been lucky enough to find another one, but I don't think they're quite done yet for the season. This is peak. It's interesting how these things always kind of coincide. We're in our very, very warm and humid part of the year. That means it's bug season. Mosquitoes are flying. All types of little creatures are transforming, coming out of their pupae or climbing up out of the ground in the case of our lightning bugs. Anyway, they're all flying around, and so it's no coincidence that the things that eat those bugs are also starting to appear. So keep your eyes open. They are around, and good luck trying to identify one of the species. So the last few weeks we've been talking about lizards. Laura, we had, here's Mac. This is a little tiny lizard that Laura found, 2.5 weeks ago, going on 3 weeks ago. He's still living in my kitchen, still doing fine, still eating those flightless fruit flies. I've not had to buy another jar yet. The reproduction is kind of kicked into high gear, and he's had plenty of food, but he has not really grown past the fruit fly stage yet. He's still only about, I would say with his tail now, he's about 3 inches long. Looking pretty good, so my fingers are crossed. This could be, I believe, the last one that I tried to raise. This, by the way, these are brown anoles, imported or introduced by accident from Cuba and now living all over Florida. If you missed the previous episodes, we were talking about them because they're showing up around here. These Florida lizards are showing up in Illinois because they're being transported up here in tropical plants that are grown in Florida. So anyway, here's the one that Laura had in her living room here in St. Charles. This is the one that was reported out near Elburn. Well, so then yesterday, it's kind of late breaking lizard news. Let's see if we got this turned up. I'm going to play this voicemail.
I'm calling actually because I'm out by Cava Diem, the coffee shop, and there is a lizard here who seems, according to someone who works at a nearby place, it is some kind of lizard that is someone's pet, but we don't really know. We just know that there is a lizard on the loose, and a passerby who knew you, and I did not get her name, said that you might be a good person to check with about this lizard, and I believe she said she texted you a picture. But someone Googling said the kind of lizard is a Timor monitor, and I know nothing about lizards. Anyway, they are going to put this lizard in a box, and we just need somewhere to take this lizard. I don't know if the park district would be an appropriate place, or if someone knows anyone who's like the appropriate place to take this lizard.
Anyway, she went on to say that the lizard was coming our way. And as it turns out, the passerby was our marketing manager, Erica, and she sent me this text message, lizard, downtown STC. And here's the photo she sent. I have to tell you guys, I've seen a lot of lizards. I used to have an iguana. I've kept green anoles a number of times. I've helped take care of some of the true chameleons. When lizards are on the loose around here, it's usually one of the more common species. A lot of times people will adopt bearded dragons as pets. By common, I mean common in the pet trade. Bearded dragons are probably one of the #1 most commonly kept lizards, and they're probably the #1 most commonly dumped lizards. Lizards they're kind of tricky because they need a lot of gear. They need UV lamps that replicate the sun's rays. They need heat lamps because most of them are from tropical areas. Some of them have kind of bizarre diets. They're not exactly a beginner's type of lizard. Even the easiest ones a lot of times need live food, whether it's insects or something else. But it's a difficult lizard. And then when I saw this text message, I thought, what the heck is this thing? I've never seen one before. Well, it came over here to Good Natured World Headquarters, which is also the headquarters for the marketing department for the Park District, and word spread quickly. Now, here we have Heather and Jenny. They work next door at the Baker Community Center. I don't know how they found out, but they heard we had an alligator, so they came over to see it. By this point, Erica had returned to the office. I'm going to turn the sound down because there's a lot of exclamating going on. But here you can see Erica is telling the story of being at Cavadim. She brought this thing over to the office in a cardboard box, which, as we were trying to figure out what to do with it, it escaped. Luckily, Erica was able to find it. But look at this thing. It is really a gorgeous creature. Not terribly large. That's my hand. I would say head to toe. It was maybe 2 feet to the tip of the tail, but probably more like 18 or 20 inches. So not terribly large. If you're at all familiar with lizards, you may have heard of a group of lizards called the monitors. This lizard definitely has a monitor shape, that kind of flattened head, the pointy nose, the long tail. As it turned out, it is an Acke's monitor, Varanus acantharus. It's from Australia. The males get larger than the females. They're even the biggest ones though are under 30 inches. Like a lot of our pet lizards, their lifespan is estimated at 15 to 20 years. Because this one is somewhat new to the pet trade, I would imagine that lifespan is an estimate that might increase over time as husbandry knowledge grows. They are carnivores. They eat live food or animal-based proteins. So you can see in this photo, it's gone from the cooler, which was plan A, to the aquarium that Erica picked up to house this thing just so it wouldn't get her big fear. And she kept looking at me as she was saying this. Her fear was that it would get loose in the office and it would just, be running around here forever and we would hear it but not see it. We wouldn't be able to find it. So she made sure it had secure lodging, even though we all had agreed we weren't going to keep this thing. At this point, I put a notice on the infamous What's Happening in St. Charles Facebook page, and I didn't get called a Karen, which was a nice thing. And nobody made a joke about coyotes or mattress stores. Few people were sincerely trying to help. They shared the post. They heard from a few people who said that they were going to try and help. There was one woman who actually went to Cavadim to see if she could find the lizard, not understanding that we already had it, brought it into safety. But anyway, the this is the picture that we took once we got it set up. I didn't post any pictures on Facebook because I didn't want people to look at that and go, oh, I want that lizard. I'm going to claim that it's mine. And you know, burden of proof with a pet lizard. They may have pictures, they may not. Anyway, we didn't post any pictures, but we took some pictures ourselves. And the thing that struck Erica and I both about this lizard was it was really cuddly. It's scaly, so it's not like the soft fuzzy kind of cuddly, but it didn't whip its tail. It didn't try to bite. It just really seemed to enjoy being around people. So that sort of is pointing us, in the direction of this is certainly someone's pet. Are we going to be able to find the owner? Well, we looked at it a little closer. We noticed, look at this back foot, trouble afoot. There's toes missing. There were some, another foot looked kind of funky as well. So then we started thinking, well, should the owner really have this lizard back if it was being mistreated? Then the more we talked, the more we, thought, well, we'll call the police department, we'll see if anybody's reported something missing. We'll call animal control to see if somebody had called them looking for a missing lizard. We would just, try to find out as much as we could about where this lizard might belong. I also talked to a friend of mine who's got some connections with a couple of zoos, and actually 2 zoos. This is another thing I've been conditioned over the years to tell people: if you have a pet you don't want, don't try to give it to a zoo, because zoos have enough animals as it is. But oddly enough, there were 2 zoos that had said they could take this animal, probably mostly because of its rarity. Ackie monitors are not that common. But anyway, flash forward to last night. I was home and I got a notification that I had a Facebook message. It was from a woman who said that a former roommate had a lizard that looked like that, and she was the one that identified it as an Ackie monitor, even without seeing any photos. She just, sent a picture of the lizard that her former roommate had. Turns out it was a friend of a friend who kind of needed a place to stay, was going through some things. The lizard, while staying at their house, got sick with a foot infection. So, she's messaging me all these details. I'm like, oh my gosh, the picture matches, the funky foot matches. I think we found a connection anyway. Now we get back to that question, do we want it to go back to the owner? Well, it turns out the owner's kind of out of the picture now. She's moved on. We think, this is just a theory, but we think the lizard was released at Mount St. Mary's Park. Cabo Diem, where it was found, is just a block or so north of there. So it's kind of what we've pieced together. We don't know how long the lizard was out on the loose. What we do know is that it was reunited with not the person who let it go, but the person that person was staying with. Here's the happy reunion that occurred this afternoon here at the marketing department. The lizard is going to go to, these people actually have a good friend who's an exotic animal vet. The foot appears to have healed up, but they're going to get it checked out anyway. They've got UV lights, they've got heat lamps, they've got closure, they've got bedding, they've got everything that's needed. Kind of interestingly enough, they have all this because they're allergic to furry creatures. So they've always had an affinity for reptiles. And I'm just glad that the lizard story has a happy ending. And I can't wait to hear about whatever more lizards are going to show up this summer. Seems like just 2021 might be the year of the lizard. So this little segment, this photo was taken last week. We had a Learn from the Experts program over at Creek Bend Nature Center called the, what were we focusing on? Oh, the giant silk moths, the sternidid moths. And part of the moth program involved talking about the different ways that moths, that you can attract moths. Now the setup in this photo was purchased through a company called BioQuip. You can look them up online if you're looking for a mothing sort of rig. This particular Creek Bend does own. It's a little pricey. The UV light is, I don't know, the whole setup is a few $100s, but if you're really into moths, this is the way to go because it's got the stand, it's got the light, there's a portable battery pack, there's this mesh. But what was funny was as these insects were flying like moths to a flame, you could also say it's like nature nerds to a UV lamp. We were just all clustered around this thing. And you can see here, one of the participants, he's got a bug net around his head, but boy, we were just so fascinated by not just the moths, but there were, this being set up not too far from Fearson Creek, we were seeing mayflies and caddisflies. There were some teneral or recently emerged mayflies that were really cool to look at. And it was just really fun to watch. I shot a little video here so you can get a sense of what happened lights at night. People were just so enthralled by this.
His wings open though. It was a tiny guy.
Tiny little thing.
What about this one right here?
Turn this down. One of the neat things too, as we were watching, so you can see some caddisflies here, there's some little beetles. The longer the light was on, the more other insects started to show up. So there was a rove beetle, there was another type of predatory beetle. So as these insects that are drawn to light started to emerge, then the things that eat the insects that are drawn to light started to come out as well. It's a really fun evening. You can make similar setups. In fact, iNaturalist, there's a whole page on iNaturalist that gives you some step-by-step instructions for how to make a more do-it-yourself version of this slick light rig. But this is just one way to attract moths. Here's the other one. I may have run this recipe before, but I know we were talking about it the night of the program. I actually had come upon was given a box of bananas when I was over delivering produce to the food pantry the other day. And bananas are key to creating an attractive, overripe bananas, I should add, are key to attracting these moths. What you're going for when you create a moth bait is more of it's all about the consistency. You don't want it too runny and you don't want it too thick. You don't want to glop it on and you don't want it to dribble down the tree. You want it just thick enough that it'll stick. I liken it to wallpaper paste, but I realized not that many people wallpaper using paste anymore. So think of like a very thin milkshake, thicker than milk, but not so thick that it's going on in big glops. But I shared this recipe, but there's also a really nice website that I had forgotten that I bookmarked. This is a website called Thought Company, and they have a really interesting page, very comprehensive. And sugaring for moths, setting out moth bait, there's a lot of nuances. People who do it all the time like to, kind of guard their recipe. Some people, I use beer because that's usually what I've got around the house, but some people use wine, some people use mead, some people use rum. But that sugary alcohol component is one key ingredient. You want to sort of get some fermentation going. So whatever concoction you make, it's nice to leave it sitting at room temperature for a couple days to allow it to kind of bubble away some more. Even just using a 12-ounce bottle or can of beer, you're probably going to make more than you need. What I found is that I just put it in a Ziploc bag, squeeze the air out, and freeze it. I'm actually on my 3rd year of using a single batch of moth bait. So it's very, very seasonal. We're actually, I don't know if we're in the midst of International Moth Week. It seems like I think it is the last week in July, but very timely topic. And it's a fun thing to do. Just paint some moth bait on your trees and wait for the fun to begin. Also helps if you're a night owl, because some of the best traffic starts showing up. Some of the best moths start showing up after 10 p.m. So keep that in mind too. Have fun with it. And I'd love to hear what results you achieve. Now, if you've been tuning in for a while, you probably remember back in the day, last fall, I had rescued a spider that was in between two windows, dining room spider. I gave periodic updates on how she was doing. Dining room spider, I brought her in the fall. I felt bad because she wasn't getting a lot of food living in between the screen and the dining room window. Not a lot of insects were getting in there, so she was quite thin. But I brought her in, I fed her, she created an egg case, and she just kind of hung out. Well, imagine my surprise when I came to work the other day and I saw we had this beautiful hanging. We've changed from, I say we, it wasn't me, it's marketing downstairs. They always have seasonal decorations here on the door of our office. But look down here in the right, you can just start to see this web here. Well, if we look a little closer, it's another dining room spider, not in a dining room. It's a grass spider, Gelenopsis. These are the sheet webs that we're seeing right now. They're starting to show up. We haven't had a lot of rain to knock them down. The other thing, and what I was able to observe when I kept one of these in my dining room, I should add, if you're not familiar with dining room spider, she was in an aquarium. She wasn't just running around the dining room, but I would watch how she would craft this web, and it wasn't something that she built in a night. It's like Rome, and it wasn't a day. It took several weeks to attain this sort of thickness. So I suspect this spider may have been working on this web for a while, and it's just recently that I noticed it. You can see that it goes from the door over to the door frame. This is actually on the door that we don't use a lot of time. It is secured in this wonderful old house that we work in. So we only, I don't know if we ever open it. If we have a large delivery, it always comes in the back door. But anyway, I'm going to keep an eye on her, and we'll see what kind of delicacies she traps in this wonderful web of hers. She was just ready to disappear. Her little funnel is right behind this lower petal of the wall decoration. So I've got something to look forward to when I come to work. And if you come visit me, you can come visit her too. Now, this is something I've put off for a few weeks. And I have to be honest, I've waited too long. This is no longer news from the world of geese. It is old news. They kind of are moving out of this life phase. What I wanted to convey, though, is that our local Canada geese do, actually a lot of waterfowl do this. They go through a period of time as they're raising their young where they are completely flightless. They molt in such a way, they lose their feathers. In fact, if you walk around our parks, you'll see evidence of this molting that's occurred. Feathers are all over the place. Some places it actually looks like a goose, was killed, but really it's just they're shedding, they're molting their feathers. And the point I wanted to convey is that they do it in a most unusual way. It sounds like it would be, it would work against them. It doesn't sound like a good survival strategy, but by losing their flight feathers and becoming completely flightless, they are able to keep themselves grounded as their young are attaining their maturity. The other thing that happens, geese don't breed till they're, say, 2 or 3 years old. So there's a period of time where a Canada goose can fly, yet they're not tied down. They don't have family obligations. They're just kind of hanging out in the singles club. Well, they actually, a lot of times will take off and they'll fly to points north. And they will molt on a northern molting ground, and then they come back down. Even some of the resident geese will do this, which I thought was really interesting. But anyway, it's old news because they are starting to fly again. I had a group of about 12 fly over my head the other day. But keep this in mind, that they do go through a period of time where they are completely flightless. That was all I wanted to say about that. And I just kept running out of time to say it. So got it out there. Remember to watch for it as we get into summer again next year. So this really took me by surprise. I got this email over the weekend, Saturday morning, in fact. I'm using it in its entirety. I've not included the person's name, but it goes like this. Hi, I just came across this now, and I think what this person means, I had written about this topic a couple of years ago, and it's still out there. The internet never really gives up its dead. This article isn't current anymore, but it's still out there, and I've sort of become a source of information for this particular topic. So that's what this person is referring to. I've just come across this now. It's 7 a.m. I've been up the entire night online trying to figure out exactly what cat I saw. I came home sometime between 12:30 and 1 a.m. and I pulled into my garage. My garage door was still open with the light on and my hands were full. I had to make another trip back for more things to carry in, so I just left the light on. As I started out of my garage, I froze because at the end of the driveway stood very still a very large animal. At first glance, I thought, wow, it's a deer? That's unusual here in my yard. So I walked a little closer and still didn't move. It just stood there still looking at me. And the closer I got to it, the clearer it became. I was not looking at a deer. Dun, dun, dun. So it was a bobcat or a mountain lion? However, I didn't even know if this was a possibility. That's why I've been reading and watching people's videos all night. I made a noise like you would to a cat with my lips. I'm guessing that's maybe a little kissy sound, or I don't know. When I call my cat, I just go, hey, Jimmy. Anyway, she made a noise as you would to a cat with the lips. Then it walked, not ran, down the sidewalk in front of me. No way at the moment I could have gotten to my buried cell phone in the bottom of my purse in time to capture any video with my hands full. I was raised in Texas, and bobcats were a common thing we heard about. We knew they lived among us. I had no idea they would be in Illinois. But after reading all night on the subject, I understand how it has happened. It's concerning to me if there's a family of them living by me. People who don't understand or even try to educate themselves on animals just pull out their guns and shoot them. I don't want that to happen. That's the reason, and my only reason, to tell you about it. I once saw a man in a split second a few streets away pull an axe from the bed of his pickup truck and chase a coyote down the sidewalk to try and kill it. Of course, he couldn't catch it. However, he does have guns. He shoots geese with paintball guns. Stuff like that. Anyway, I saw this large bobcat on Waverly Avenue, Streamwood, Illinois. So be really interested for you guys to weigh in with your opinions on this, because something that could be mistaken for a deer would be really tall. Something that could be a large cat. Bobcats are not huge. I mean, they're very leggy. I'm actually communicating with this person right now to see if I can get some more details, but really the giveaways on that would be, if, of course, the tail of bobcat, typically their tail is short, but the other thing is the backs of the ears, they have black markings, and there's a white, the back of the ear is black, and there's a white circle on each ear. So I'm hoping to get a little bit more information on this, but this, I tell you, bobcats just keep coming up. I'm convinced they're around, really elusive, be hard to pin one down. I don't know that one would be breeding in Streamwood, Illinois, but they are pretty mobile animals. They tend to have a wide range. There could I think very likely be a bobcat passing through town. I thought it was interesting that this person chose bobcat rather than cougar, because cougars are, of course, our largest cat. Anyway, whether it's a bobcat or whether it's a cougar, I will let you guys know if I find out anything else. But anyway, clearly, Best Email of the Week award goes to this person right here. So I'm going to wrap up with a little commercial here. This is one of our employees at Hickory Knolls, a woman named Sam. She's a tree person. She is hosting the Right Tree for Me. It's coming up on Tuesday, August 24th, 7 to 8 p.m. So that is right before this class, but you know, we're going to be off the week before. If you want to take this Tuesday off and go see Sam, learn about what tree would be right for your yard, feel free. I said I'd let you guys know about it. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me. With that, I'm going to tell you what next week's lineup is. Joe Pye, finally going to write about it after I went to visit it, and fill you in on how this wonderful woodland plant actually ended up with the name Joe Pye. We're going to do a little crayfishing, got some more fun spiders. With the rain that we had, even though it's getting kind of dry again, we have had some pretty cool fungus popping up. Reader emails are always coming in, might have an update on those bobcats, and you never know what's going to happen in the next week. With that, I'm going to stop our screen share because there's one more thing I wanted to show you. If you'll bear with me for just a second. You might remember these guys. All right. So, do you remember, if you've been watching Good Natured for a while, you might remember, several months ago, we ordered blubber grasshoppers from an online purveyor of such things, of live insects for insect keeping. And the blubbers have matured now. And they're pretty good size. This is a species that is native to the Southeast. This is not a subspecies, but a color form that is common to Central Florida. Oops. Let me show you just a couple things. So one large insect, they produce a chemical that makes them distasteful. So they have this warning coloration on their wings. Can you see the red underneath there? Let's see if I can get the lighting right here. There it is. They have red, even though they're basically flightless at this size, they're too big to, that's why they're called lubbers. Well, they can hop. All right, I'll let that go for now. They can hop, but really once they attain their full size, they're feeding from time to time, but they're really, the main reason for hanging on at this point in their lives is to reproduce. So that's what's going on. That's what's going on in the tank behind me for the last, I would say, week or so. And I'm gonna see if we can get some reproduction. So I got a couple of buttercups here that I filled with sand. Now I'm gonna try and tip this. Can you see the holes in the sand? This is how grasshoppers create their next generation. The female, once she's ready to start depositing eggs, she'll sit in this cup. Or if she's in the wild, she'll sit in the ground. She'll drill down with that abdomen. She'll push into sandy soil, and then she'll make those holes, and she'll lay her eggs in there. This is moist sand, and I'm going to try and keep it this way. It's just moist enough that it holds its shape when I squeeze the container. See how it squeezes in? Oh, I got sand in my keyboard. IT guy's going to be unhappy with me again. But anyway, so there are now lubber eggs in this container. There's one more container in the enclosure, and I'm hoping that we will get some reproduction. I'll keep you apprised of that. I'll also let you know if I find the lubber that hopped. She's down there somewhere. With that, I see we got a couple of chats here. That's right. We found, in addition, thanks for reminding me, Diane, in addition to finding the moths the other night, we also found a katydid. Those guys have just started to call. There's a couple of great places around here to hear them. Well, anytime you're near mature woods, you're going to hear them. I have particularly fond summertime memories of sitting at the corner of Peck and Dean Streets, waiting for a chance to turn and just hearing, I don't know if it's black locust, it's not a really great tree that's along there, but for some reason the katydids are really thick in that area. But the katydids, the males are starting to call, and if you're really lucky, you can hear them. Sometimes the males will synchronize their call, katydid, 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 and they'll all get going at the same rate, which amplifies the volume, and it increases their attractiveness to all the lady katydids. So, anybody have any questions or anything? Laura McKenzie, are you with us tonight?
Yep, I am.
I'm gonna put the spotlight on you, Laura. You had mentioned that you saw another lizard. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was at my old school, Wild Rose School, and there's a prairie I'm trying to maintain out there, but having trouble. But at any rate, I went to weed, and there's an old rain barrel that some Girl Scouts had put out there. And as I approached the rain barrel, sure enough, a lizard was on the rain barrel. And this one was, I'd say, a good 5 inches long, probably, but it scooted so fast that I didn't get to see even like what type it might be. Not that I know very many, but I do know what an old.
We're learning, aren't we?
Yes, we are. But, and I kind of looked around and I couldn't find it, but I just couldn't believe it, you know, with the lizards, well, the one that was in my living room, and, you know, and the other ones that have been, and now this other one at Cavadium. But I go out there usually about, you know, when it gets a little cooler, so I'm going to keep an eye out for it. You know, I'm sure it's got plenty to eat, but you know, I don't know, you know, if it's an escapee or what's going on there. So
yeah, I wonder, I'm trying to picture that where the garden is at Wild Rose isn't particularly close to any houses, is it? It's over on the
it's on the southwest side, yeah. So there are houses across the street both ways, but not real close, you know.
Super close. I'm trying to think if, you know, if somebody had bought, or I don't know, like if anybody had put anything at the, like on the steps of the school. I'm trying to think of where somebody might have bought some plants that were grown in Florida. And I'm sure these things, you know, they hop. I know little Mac in his little enclosure at my house, he's hopping around when he's going after those fruit flies. I'm sure he could cover a distance if he wasn't, you know.
Yeah. Well, and this one was so fast, and the rain barrel is a painted plastic, so it's very smooth. And it was on the side of the rain barrel and just scooted as soon as it could sense my presence. And I was so mad I couldn't find it, but then I didn't want to kill it, you know, or step on it. So I've got my eye out.
Well, and I wonder, you know, it could be the brown anole. You know, we've also got the house geckos making appearances in Geneva.
Okay. So who knows?
Another, Mediterranean house geckos are doing well around here as well. And they have the advantage of being inside of, you know, a building, so they can overwinter pretty easily.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, I
Yeah.
know a lot of my students in fairly recently in the past talk about having lizards as pets actually. And so, I wonder how many of them, are escapees or mom and dad decided enough's enough. So
It's, one of the conversations that came out of this Ecky's monitor that we had here in the office was how prevalent this idea of, and it's not even, I'm gonna, let it go to get rid of it. People will actually say, I'm giving it its freedom, never
Yeah.
mind, this is not only the wrong continent for an Ecky's monitor, so the wrong hemisphere and the wrong, wrong everything. I don't quite understand it, but we did, in addition to the zoos, we also heard from a rescue group that said that they're just having some, now that people are leaving the house again, anything they bought during COVID, they don't have time for, and they're just,
yeah.
they let it go, not let it go outside, but they let the care go until the animal is sick or needs help, it's injured in some way, and then they let it go, or they just
Yeah.
park and think, oh, it'll be fine.
As Kay just texted, off to the farm.
Right.
Not a good thing.
Come on, little lizard. We're gonna go for a ride now.
Hey, Pam, I did have a quick question. Maybe this could be a subject for another time. I could talk to you another time. But I was, doing the Del Nor camp a couple weeks ago, and our kids were turning over logs and getting slugs and centipedes and things like that. And my partner who was working with me, picked up what looked like a regular earthworm, and the thing jumped. It literally wiggled and jumped and scared us both. And we're like, what the heck was that? And we managed to get it into a big viewer. It was thinner than a regular earthworm. But then my daughter, Kate, who had a little information, she goes, well, Mom, there are jumping earthworms or jumping worms, and they're invasive, and they're actually not good for the soil. They make it siltier. And I had never heard of this. And I said, well, I think we just had a jumping worm because I've picked up a lot of worms. I've never had one.
Yes, you have, Laura. You've been teaching that camp for how many years?
I don't know. I lost track.
I mean, how many decades, I guess we should say?
How many decades? I started with Mary O, so.
At least 2, I would say, right? Well, yeah. I would not be surprised, because Del Nor Woods is where we found those hammerhead worms, which are
I remember that.
Introduced species, and jumping worms are, how most of our local, or they're all pretty much any worm we find around here is not native, but the common species that we find, they've got that segment, enlarged segment on their body. It's called a clitellum, and it wraps around the body. Well, in jumping worms, that clitellum isn't raised up at all. It's smooth.
Oh, okay.
Coloration is variable, but it's light in color. Maybe we could meet over there. We keep saying we're going to do that. I want to go explore the old beaver lodge there.
Well, yeah, I'm there till 11:45 every day, so Friday.
You would
anytime.
4-year-olds.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I will try to get over there, Laura, because I would love this, maybe poke around with you and see if we could find some more. That would not surprise me at all. The hammerhead worms, the thinking is they came to this country in the soil of landscaping plants that were imported from Japan and China. That's the same with the jumping worms. They weren't an intentional introduction. But what Kate said is true, and it's kind of like the problem we have with our common earthworms already, because they're not native. They are processing leaves and other organic material at a faster rate than the other decomposers in this area. So they're kind of stealing the nutrients away from the decomposer level. And we're talking not just the decomposers we can see, but also the bacteria and things that have coalesced over millennia in this area. All of a sudden, the earthworms have only been here a couple hundred years. We may have had earthworms, prior to the last ice age, but all the glacial material that was deposited here kind of buried all of that. So it's just been as European settlers have come that we've seen this influx of European and now Asian species. Jumping worms are, I don't remember their native region, but it is Asia that they come from.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah.
I'll keep my eye out for more.
If you can take a picture even, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I know. If I didn't have all the kids with me, I probably
Yeah,
would
geez,
have pulled out the
Laura,
phone.
what are you spending your time?
I know.
Can't you?
Oh, thanks,
Never
Pam.
mind. This is why I don't teach preschool, Kim.
They're fun.
I don't know where they went. I was watching worms and all of a sudden the kids were gone. All right, yeah, well, we'll maybe
ended up in the pond.
yeah. What can go on there?
Yeah. The teacher gets stuck in the mucky pond getting the child out. That's what happens.
Oh boy. Well, yeah, maybe we'll do a jumping worm update if we find some. I would love to get some footage, some actual St. Charles footage of jumping worms in action. And
Yeah.
Actually be kind of bad news that we have them, but boy, I'd like to find out where they are. Maybe we could, collect the ones we find, and I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Maybe
awesome.
lizards eat them. We'll see.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, thanks, Laura. Didn't mean to put you on the spot,
thanks,
but as
Pam.
always, I appreciate your input. And
Sure.
else have anything for the good of the group? If not, I thank you so much for spending part of your Tuesday evening here, Good Natured World Headquarters. I'm going to let you go now. I've got a grasshopper I've got to catch. So have a great rest of your week, and I hope to see you back again next week.
Good luck. Good luck. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Pam.
See you guys.